If you were giving your friend advice on their love life, chances are you're giving pretty good love advice. But chances are you're not following it yourself. And I think true wisdom is like knowing what sets you up for long-term success and actually following it. Gary, do people really know what they want in a partner? That's the question we're going to be discussing today. And right before I just pressed play on this podcast, we just discussed how we really don't want to sound like jerks on this podcast. So we got to soften it up a little bit, make it palatable for people. Because, at the end of the day, when we're talking about these things, it's tricky when you're single and dating and you have one vision of what you think you might want. But from our perspective as coaches, sometimes we need to reframe those beliefs and reframe those ideas to guide people to success. I don't know. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah, no, I think it comes down to something we talk about a lot, which is, we have this perspective of tough love that, like sometimes you have to just confront reality in a way that's not always comfortable. But it's done with a lot of love, and it's coming from a place of like nurturing and growth and being kind of pushed outside of your comfort zone. It's like exactly why you hire a personal trainer, right? It's like you don't hire a personal trainer to be like, you're perfect.
You're just so amazing. Great.
You're just wonderful the way you are. Like
your love handles are so sexy. Oh yeah.
So, we don't want to be like, you don't know exactly what you're talking about or anything, but it's like, there's just some things that people often think they know about approaching dating that they actually don't know. And through this podcast, you're going to learn a little bit about that. And it's going to help you recalibrate and be a little bit more clear about how to get what you want.
Yeah. And I think we just have such a unique perspective on this because we have a lot of personal experience working with so many clients. And I would say one of the most transformational things that we do when we work with clients is helping them go from thinking they want one thing when they join to then reframing and rethinking about what leads them to long-term success and kind of redirecting them. Honestly, it's like you kind of sell them on the dream, which we want them to have that ultimate dream, but the way to get there kind of changes once they're in. It's crazy to admit that, but that is really what we do. And at the end of the process, they are like, thank God I followed this, because previously I was just going for all the wrong stuff. I thought I wanted something different. And many times it's just kind of like redirecting them from looking for short-term satisfaction to long-term results, and kind of like rethinking ultimately what it is that they want. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, because when you ask most women, what do you want in a partner? Like everybody, when you ask them what they want about anything, they want like this dream, like, what do you want out of life? I want to be rich. Like, who doesn't want to be rich, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want in a partner? I want somebody that makes 6 figures, is 6 foot tall, right? Has 6-pack abs, and is super emotional. Like, and it's like all this, of course, that's what everybody wants. But that you're not going to find, or you're not finding those things, and you're not really looking for the right things if you're constantly feeling like dating and relationships are confusing. Like you have relationships that start out great, then fizzle out. If you're having a hard time picking the right partners, if you're just finding like guys aren't out there, or if you just kind of think men are hard to figure out, like all of those are signs that you're not quite properly calibrated with knowing what you're looking for and knowing what you really want in a partner.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really what we'll be getting into today, is diving into just kind of like refocusing our energy to the right places. So walk us through it, Gary.
Yeah. And so, I want to start this out by kind of saying it's not just you as a listener that doesn't know what you want. This is true of most people. And the research shows that this is exactly the case. And so research shows that daters think they know what they want, but don't actually know. And so what they had people do was kind of come into a study, list out all of the things that they wanted in a partner, and then gave them a chance to go out and meet someone that had a lot of those qualities or not.
Oh, that's good.
What they found was, as much as people were like, yes, I want a kind, respectful person, or, whatever, they didn't do any of that. They didn't follow that. Really what they ended up kind of retreating to is just basic evolutionary, like, was this person hot? Were they compatible in a charismatic kind of way? Was there like that feeling of chemistry? And so, even though like when you ask people objectively, what is it that you want? And they're like really reasonable about it. Like, I want these qualities. Then you'll let them loose in the wild and they just kind of
Yeah.
fall back into bad habits.
We're all a bunch of animals, man. We just go
Yeah.
right back to like, oh my God, he
Yeah.
smells so good. And he just like, when he hugs me, he just completely like engulfs me. And that is so sexy. But there's this really nice guy who I have a lot in common with over there. But man, oh man, this guy,
Right.
he makes me feel something else.
Yeah. And it's like, so you have all these people, and I mean, this was one study, and there's lots of other studies that kind of show that similar things, that we're just not very good at knowing what we want. And so what's going on? Like where's this mismatch coming from? And I think there's kind of two main issues. The first is a focus problem. And that's where, it could be that people are just clueless. They have no clue at all of what they're looking for. And I don't think that's it, right? I think people do have some basic idea of what they're looking for. I think it's much more likely that they're kind of fuzzy about it. Like they have vague notions. It's like a fuzzy target of like this guy they're looking for sort of exists, but they're not really sure. Like they don't have strong convictions about what they're looking for.
Right.
And that just makes it harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a bullseye, you're going to miss it every single time. And so a lot of times this happens because people just have a lack of experience. They haven't really spent the time to just reflect on what's worked for them and what hasn't, and be real with themselves. And that sense of that like level of introspection is so important and sometimes requires time. It might take a walk down by the ocean, skip some rocks. If you can do that into an ocean, maybe a pond, that might be a little bit easier. And just really think about not just what you like when you first meet someone on a first date, but what do you want when you've been married to someone for 10 years? What qualities and attributes are most important to you? And it's so tricky because sometimes those are opposite things. Like sometimes the things we are attracted to are the very things that are bad for us long term. Like a guy who's hot and cold can sometimes be really attractive, but do you want a partner who's hot and cold? No, obviously not, right? Whereas a guy who is very emotionally available, who gives you his all, who tells you how he feels, like, do you want that in a husband? Hell yeah. But like, is that hot on a first date? No. So it's like really coming to terms with that and understanding like how can you actually make this work for you in your dating life so you can be set up for long term?
Yeah, I always like thinking about this in terms of like the best strategy I think for this is kind of picture yourself when you're 95 or 100 years old and you're sitting out on your porch and you're kind of reflecting back on your life. And, we always think about people in that stage, like they have a lot of wisdom and they have like these points of interest to tell people about who are younger. And like, what would yourself tell you? Like, what would your 95, 100-year-old self tell you right now? What advice would you give yourself as a 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old about who you should be dating? And because, we say it's a lack of experience, it's lack of introspection, it's lack of reflection and clear plan. It's like, but if you kind of put yourself in that wise, older, experienced person's mindset, it's like free mentorship. You get to mentor yourself. And I think that shift in perspective can be really, really helpful for people.
I heard this quote the other day. Oh, I wish I remember who it came from, but it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And that is, wisdom is just simply following your own advice. Like most people know, like if you asked yourself, like if you were giving your friend advice on their love life, chances are you're giving pretty good love advice. But chances are you're not following it yourself. And I think true wisdom is like knowing what sets you up for long-term success and actually following it. And like, I think the same thing goes in all areas of our life. Like if we're overweight, like when I'm gaining some weight, I know what to do. Like it's like exercise and eat less junk food, right? And eat cleaner foods. Pretty simple stuff, right? But wisdom is actually listening to that advice and acting on it and having the discipline to make it happen. And so I think that that's a lot of what we're going to be kind of diving into today.
Yeah. And I love this, a little bit of a tangent, but I love that you kind of differentiate between wisdom and knowledge, because there's like how many people I'll speak from my, like, there's tons of people that I know that study relationships. Like it's their research, it's what they do, it's what they talk about, and lots of them are divorced.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, that's a different, like knowing what to do and actually pulling it off and how to do it and implement it is a big deal. And I think that's the second part where people go wrong, is that you may know what you want or not. Let's assume you do know what you know. But then the second part is actually like following through and putting it into action. It's like, if I know the kind of guy I'm looking for, can I actually know it when I see it and follow through on that impulse to make sure I land that guy along the way? Right. And it's like, we had a client who in one of our mastermind sessions was talking about how the thing she really wants more than anything in a guy, she was crystal clear about what she wanted. She's like, I want someone who's smart, but not like book smart necessarily, but I want someone who can carry an intellectual conversation. I want someone who's intellectually stimulating. It's like, perfect. Perfect. That's exactly the kind of quality like we encourage people to like really focus in on. And then she said, and I know how I'm going to find him. I'm like, great. Awesome. Perfect. This is wonderful. I'm only going to date guys with advanced degrees. I'm like, terrible idea.
Oh God.
Terrible idea. Terrible idea. Like,
this is coming from a professor, by the way, everybody. Yeah, a PhD professor.
I have advanced degrees. Like, this is not the best criteria for thoughtful, insightful conversation. Like, if you want to get into like small, specific, like sometimes inane conversations about details that no one really cares about, like, okay, maybe. But in any case, what I'm saying is you can have the right target, but how you're going to get there, like she might get there, but only focusing on people that have advanced degrees. She might, but that's actually like, she's going with the wrong criteria. It's like, talk to guys, right. See if they can carry on these types of conversations you want. Focus on that, not, well, if you don't have a master's or a PhD, I just can't waste my time. Like it's an implementation problem sometimes too.
It's a strategy problem, right? And like, you know, her goal is right on. She knows where she wants to go, but the way to get there is just off. And I'm sure when you were talking to her, you were redirecting her attention, you know, on where it is she should be focusing her energy. And like you just said, rather like, I personally, I used to lecture at universities. That's all I did. I spoke at like 300 colleges. Academics are some of the dumbest people I've ever met. I mean, they're the best. Like when it comes to even just common sense, and I'm talking to an academic, I realize that right now, but like they're very good at very specific problems like you were discussing, but common sense wise, I've met some of the smartest people in the world who have very blue collar jobs, who are like intellectually incredible or so stimulated. They're just maybe not like super ambitious, don't want to start a business, whatever. I mean, it's pretty wild. So I think your point exactly is like, rather than focusing in on just like one very specific area, just talk to lots of guys and see what actually stimulates your intellect. And so I love that. And sorry to just totally bash on academics, but I'm pretty sure you feel the same way. Maybe you wouldn't say dumbest. Maybe I'm being strong because all of your colleagues are gonna be like, really, Gary? Really?
I would just say no lies detected. That all sounded pretty okay. I don't know if I'll fully endorse dumb, but not, you know,
I can't wait till your next your meetings that you guys have in your department, and they're like, so Gary, I heard on the podcast you're talking about us. I don't know why they're getting all like New Jersey. So Gary, I don't even know. Your college is in New Jersey, right? So
it is. And to just make sure I don't get myself in any more trouble, I'm just going to end this part there, and we're going to segue on to the next thing.
Sorry. Hey, man, I just want to like bash. I want to hit this bee's nest a little bit because I don't have to get stung, just you. So,
right. And so, you know, if people are going to struggle with this from lack of focus and lack of implementation, some of it is just kind of having an outside perspective. I mean, that helps for sure. But so one of the things that we've done, and really you, to your credit, have created is a 2-part strategy to really help people figure out what they really want. And so the first step in that is to have a plan. It's something you call a love vision. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is? I know we don't have time for the full thing, but just a little bit maybe.
Yeah. I mean, briefly, love vision it's not a checklist of every single thing that you'd ever want in a guy. In fact, it's quite the opposite in many ways. It's really focusing your attention to the absolute needs, the must-haves, the deal breakers in a relation, in a man, in a relationship. And once you go through this process, we have a number of different exercises we go through with our clients. But once you have this love vision, it actually broadens your horizon of who you're willing and able to date. Because once you have very specific needs that are reasonable, and we help you determine what's reasonable and what's not. Once you have that, then anyone who meets that potential love vision, you got to go out with. And so like a lot of clients, I'll know when they haven't been following our homework and our exercises, when they're like, oh, I've created my checklist, I've created my love vision, and no one's meeting my love vision. And I'm like, I'm guessing you're missing the point on this, because a love vision is designed to really expand your what it is that you're going after.
Yeah. I mean, what I like about it is it's really all about keeping the most important thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's priorities and knowing your priorities, because you can have anything, you just can't have everything. Right. And it's like, it's about figuring out what the most important things are. Right. And I'm sure like everybody listening to this has seen like this like visual metaphor where it's like you have a mason jar and you have a bunch of rocks and then smaller pebbles and you have sand. And, you know, it's like, how do you fill this up? Like, what do you do? And it's like, the answer is you have to put the big things in first, and then you can fit the littler things around them. But it's like, you have to figure out when it comes to your relationships, like what are the big things? What are the non-negotiables? And that's where, you know, a few moments ago, I was saying, you know, this client was saying, I want somebody who's intellectually stimulating. And I'm like, yes, because that's like one of the big things. Like that's a thing you want to make sure you're getting in there first. And so you're on the right track. And so that's the first thing I really like about these things. The second part that I really love about the love visions is they're objective, in the sense that they're not tied to the person you're currently dating or someone you've previously dated in the past. It's like kind of a blank slate, and it's what's actually like, if I can step back and really evaluate like what's most important, this is what it is. And then we encourage people to look at that before they go out, and then after they go out with somebody, to kind of like recalibrate, right? And kind of make adjustments along the way.
Yeah. And I think the important part about that is that a love vision is not a tattoo on your body. It's not like once you set it, now this is your love vision for the rest of your life. Our clients actually, it's very much so a living document. Like once they create their initial love vision, they'll go out a few times, see what it is that's connecting with them, see what it is that they're really drawn to, and it's revised. And actually having it in writing and then revising it and then posting again to our community, getting that feedback from our coaches, talking about it. It's such a healthy exercise because it's just an ongoing kind of like reflective exercise while it is you're dating. And that is what dating with intention means. And I should say, like, Gary, if you saw my first love vision, my love vision, dear God, it is very different from my wife. Like, it is so different. I can't even tell you, because I was, you know, when I first started getting really intentional about like love and finding a partner, I was probably, 26. So this is well over a decade ago. And it was so ludicrous. It was like, I want her to be in self-help. I want her to be spiritual. I want her to be into yoga. I want her to like all of these things that once I started going out with, I also want her to be like hyper entrepreneurial, like all these contradictory things. Cause I didn't have what we have. I didn't have any of this stuff. And then I started going out with those people and I'm like, God damn it. I don't want to date myself. This is horrible. And I'm not even that spiritual. I don't even hang out with spiritual people. Like, it was so ludicrous. I did yoga twice. I'm like, I need to be with someone who's like very into yoga, And so I now practice yoga, but it's, and then you start dating, you start realizing what it is that you do really want, what you jive with. And then you think back again, well, is this in line with what I want in my long-term future, 20, 30 years down the line? So kind of getting that feedback loop in the short term and then thinking about how it applies to your long-term, I think is what ultimately leads to a really healthy love vision. So.
Yeah. And I think all of that process, that journey you just described is so important, because I think one of the things that makes dating hard and relationships hard is people have this mistaken notion that they're supposed to have it all figured out by now. Like everyone
Yeah.
thinks like I should know how to do this. I should have this all figured out by now. And that's just not true. I mean, particularly when you're 26, but it doesn't matter if you're 86, right? You're learning and it's a process. And so with this vision being a living document, like as you date each person, you're going to learn things you didn't know you didn't know. And then you get to update
Yeah.
your love vision accordingly. And so that brings us to step 2, which is this idea that experience is the best teacher, and that you should, to really know what you want, you have to date multiple people, right?
Yeah.
You have to move fast early on and go out, talk to, have conversations with as many people as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's little what we call little love step number 3. So when we bring on clients, we work with them. They follow 7 powerful yet small steps to get out there and attract long-lasting love. We call them the 7 little love steps. And the first 2 little love steps are all about you and reflection and creating your love vision. But then once we get to little love step 3, it is like pedal to the metal, baby. Let's get you out there meeting lots of guys, doing it with intention to see what you really like. And a lot of it is like your little love step 3, you're meeting lots of people. Then you go back to little love step 2 and look at and revise your love vision. And then you go back out again. You continuously, it's like this ongoing process. And you can't do that if you're only going out and meeting like 1 or 2 guys every 2 to 3 months. Like it doesn't work. This process doesn't work. And so, yeah, it is all about like, I think we are just so hardcore about that. Like when someone's struggling, usually that is like the underpinning of it is they're just not meeting enough new people. They're just not making it happen. And then every excuse under the sun comes up of why it is that they can't make that happen. And so much of that's where just like coaching comes in, where it's like, you can do this, got to make it happen. We might have to like just expand our horizons a little bit to get a little bit of momentum. We got to practice. And before you know it, you're going to get much more clarity about what it is that you really like, what it is that you don't like.
Yeah. I mean, so much of dating success is about patience, right? It's about taking things slow, except for this part. This part is about moving fast, meet as many people as you possibly can, because you need to play an active role. Like you haven't probably met as many people in a romantic sense as you think you have right at this point. Like there's so many more people out there than you realize. And by meeting them, you start to realize all those things you don't know. As one of our coaches, Robin, talks about all the time, she talks about, you need to have a good filter, and it's about sifting for gold. And so, you're more likely going to find that gold if you're sifting with something really large and something really small, right? In nerd speak, we call this the field of eligibles, right? Your field of eligibles, you want it to be as big as possible because that increases the chances you're going to find that one person. And so this idea of experiencing being the best teacher and dating multiple people is about increasing your field of eligibles, increasing the size of your filter, however else you want to think about it. But it's like, this is going to help you find that person.
Yeah. And
it's helpful.
Something that I think a lot of women might recoil to when they're hearing this is like, if I'm meeting a lot of guys, that might mean that I have to reject a lot of guys as well. Or like the reality is when you're in little love step 3, you're going to be saying no way more times than you're actually going to be saying yes. And that can be very difficult for a lot of people, especially those who are people pleasers, those who don't like to hurt other people's feelings. But that is really the name of the game if you want to be set up for long-term success. I mean, that's just the reality is you're going to meet a lot more guys, but just statistically that you don't like, and that's okay, than guys that you do like. And you're going to have to break some hearts along the way. And that's a kind of a tough pill to swallow. But the alternative is that you're only talking to 1, maybe 2 guys, and then you're giving them all of your energy. These guys might not even meet your love vision because you don't even know what your love vision really is. And then you're stuck, So yeah, that's kind of my thinking on that.
Yeah, I think, one of the problems, if you focus on just one person, whether you realize or not, you become highly motivated to make that one work because no one likes the idea of wasting time. And so you start seeing people get into this pattern where it's like, well, we've been together 2 months and it's not perfect, but I don't want to start over. I don't want to waste these last 2 months. And so I'm going to keep going. Then, 4 months are in. It's like, well, now it's 4 months. Now it's twice as bad. Now I'm really like, and you just start getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Hot
And
committed. Yeah.
yeah. And you're forcing yourself to make things work. That's not really ideal. Um, here, one of the big objections we get with this is women will say, I can't date multiple people. That just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. And so a lot of times what I find when they say it doesn't feel right, what they're really saying is it seems a little promiscuous. Like it feels wrong. It maybe feels a little slutty. And so like, what is your feedback? What is your suggestion about that?
Just because you're dating multiple guys doesn't mean you're sleeping with multiple guys. Right. Number one. So very important thing. Number two is this is how men date. This is how most people date. This is how a lot of women, modern women date. So if you're not dating this way, you're really at a huge disadvantage, right? And yeah, I mean, this is how guys date. This concept came from when I used to coach men on dating. And when I would tell guys that they should be dating multiple women at the same time, they were like, hell yes. Okay. And again, it wasn't sleeping with multiple women, anything like that. It was just like, meet lots of women and see what you like. And just pace, be very open and transparent about where you're at. Don't lie. Like all the same values that we teach women now, I used to teach men. Men were totally on board with, totally cool with, made total sense. Women fight this tooth and nail. And it's like, but the women who follow it are those who get just massive results. They have all the power throughout the process. They are the prize, because if a guy starts to get flaky or weird, or, they determine he doesn't meet their love vision, no problem. Move on to the next. Bye. Whatever. I got Jeff, Joe, and John to go out with next week. And you are now a figment of my past. That's it. So
yeah, and I think the other objection that I hear related to this that's very much follows from this is guys are not going to be okay with me seeing other guys. To which I always say, like, who cares? Right? Like, you don't think guys are seeing other people? Like, they're out, like you just said, like, guys are out there dating multiple people. They're talking to multiple people. So him being not okay with you doing the same behavior he's engaging in, I think we call that a double standard.
Yeah. And even if he isn't dating other women, like, and I know that's probably what popped into everyone's head. So let's just say he's not. With the Little Love Steps, we have a very stark contrast between Little Love Step 5 and Little Love Step 6. And when you're in Little Love Step number 6, you are in an exclusive committed relationship. When you're in Little Love Step number 5, you are still single. There's no gray area. So it's like, if you haven't yet had the conversation with him about exclusivity, then you, my beautiful lady, are still single. And if he has the wrong impression that you're exclusive when you haven't had the conversation, that is on him. That's on him, because you haven't had the conversation yet. Never assume exclusivity. Never. On either side. If I was coaching men, I'd be saying the same thing. And so if you just kind of go into this assuming he's being exclusive with you, you've been sleeping together, you've been kind of having the girlfriend experience, where you're giving him all your emotional energy, but you haven't yet had the conversation, you're running a massive risk. So spread the risk, talk to multiple guys, and then at a certain point, it just becomes abundantly clear that you both want to be with each other. Like, it reaches that point, usually anywhere from 1 month to 3 months of dating, where it's like, he's the only guy you can even possibly consider yourself with. He meets your love vision. He wants to be in a relationship with you. He's brought up exclusivity multiple times. Great. Go be exclusive. Now you're on Little Love Step 6. But until that point, you're single.
Right. And, I think this idea of dating multiple people, like, in other contexts, we use this approach all the time, and it makes complete sense for any big decision, right? If you're looking for a new job, you apply to one place at a time, see that through to the end, and then apply to the next place? Absolutely not. Like, you apply to multiple places at once. You hopefully have multiple interviews at once. When they ask you, are you interviewing other places? You say, yes, I am. right?
Right.
Because that only, like, of course you are. Like, nobody wants to hire the candidate that has no prospects anywhere else, right? It's like if
No.
you're going to buy a car, you're going to do the same thing. Like, you're not just going to like test drive one car and then that's it. Like, you're going to try a couple different things. You're going to consider a bunch of different options. You're going to gather information, and you're going to gather information, particularly if you haven't done this in a while, whatever this thing is. Like, so if you haven't dated in a while, gather more information. Learn, go on that journey that we talked about, revise your love vision along the way. Like, you owe it to yourself to give yourself the experiences so that when you eventually do settle on a choice, you're that much more certain about it.
God, we are so non-romantic, Gary. We are just like, what just say like a non like sexy romantic way to date, you know? But the reality is it sets you up for long-term success, right? There's some coaches out there, some advice your friends will tell you, just go with your heart, whatever you're feeling, every single step of the way. Oh, you're feeling him, just lean into him and that's it. It's like, where's that led you? Right? Like,
Right.
our feelings can actually lead us in a lot of terrible directions in life. Like constantly listening to our feelings all the time. I'm not saying like don't listen to your feelings at all, but we got to bring some strategy along with us. And this is the strategy side, is like, I want you to listen to your heart, but you got to bring the strategy. And the strategy is, even if you're talking to that guy, meets your love vision, he is amazing, he's leaning in, but you've only known for 2 weeks, accept the date from someone else. Keep with the process. Like if you get asked out by another guy, go for it. Keep with that process, lean into the process, lean into the strategy. And I'm telling you, the clients who do that, and a vast majority of our clients, it takes us usually about a month or two of working with them to really convince them to lean into this. But when they do, they're like, oh my God, this is game changer. Now I have these guys like literally begging for me to be their girlfriend. Like it just changes the whole power dynamic. And we're not doing this to manipulate or anything like that, but it elevates you in many ways throughout the process.
Well, because ultimately the relationship you're going to want to get into is going to be one where you and your partner have equal power. And so the problem is people date in a way that, you know, subjugates them and makes them lower power the whole entire time they're dating. And then they hope once they're in a long-term serious relationship, somehow they flip the switch and now they're like, hey, we're all equal now. And it's like, wait a second, you're changing the dynamics of how we set this up. And the person who had more power, who's usually the guy, is going to be like, wait, what? That's not how we set this up. We set this up where you're down here and I'm up here. And like, now you want equal? Like, so when you date smarter, you're going to set yourself up for better long-term relationships. And so, yeah, you're right. Does it sound a little not romantic? Yeah, but it's smarter, right? And it's
yes.
like, if all that romantic stuff worked, it would have worked for you by now. And it's like, we wish it worked that way. It's just, it doesn't work that way. And so we're trying to help you date smarter. Something I say all the time, you know, follow your heart, but take some strategy with you. And that's really the answer.
Yeah, I agree. So that was great, Gary. I really appreciate it. And everyone who's listening right now, take that action and start really getting out there. Talk to multiple guys, go make it happen to really learn what it is that you want. We're here for every step of the way.